check it out. The bees are here.
Okay. I'm Angie. This is my first time unloading a package. So my husband did one last year. We had a little storm that landed, and but it was very small. He added a package to it, but they just never got their numbers up. It was late summer when they landed on our yard. So this is my first time, and the first time they'll actually be in a big hive. There's no comb on these. Just put it together last year. So the setup, all I've done, I made the 1-to-1 sugar syrup. Didn't fill it all the way, but I did that. And then this is regular 1-to-1 ratio sugar syrup that I'm going to dilute to a 1-to-4 ratio with water to calm down the bees.
She's gonna spray that on the bees, right, Angie?
Yes.
She's gonna spray that on the bees, and that's gonna do a couple of things. It's gonna make them sticky, so they won't fly as much, and it's gonna make them groove each other off. It's gonna make them eat the sugar off each other.
The other side of it is they're dehydrated. They have food, so food's not so much an issue as dehydration in the cages and the process and packaging.
Okay, and I didn't have a entrance reducer, so BJ's asked him to bring me that. And
and you have a queen excluder on the bottom. I noticed that.
yes.
Might want to mention why that is.
Okay.
Queen excluder under the box.
Right, and to slow down them exiting while they're keep them in so they don't abandon is the way I understand it, right?
She can't get out. Queen can't
And the queen
get through out through there.
Okay.
But no excluder on the top.
No, it's only for a super when you put honey. You know, it's just a trick to keep the queen from escaping. She can't
It doesn't
get out.
matter if she like hangs out up here.
What is?
She won't really do that.
My excluder's on the bottom there.
You don't have to have this top suit today.
Yes, she does.
Okay.
So the queen
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and spray them through.
sprinkle that on them.
Okay.
Can I ask how long you leave the excluder on?
Not yet.
Okay. That's a better way to do it. That's what I was going to do.
Gravity is your friend.
I forgot.
She's very nervous.
And,
Just remember, they'll only sting once.
oh, she's nervous. Presentation. Okay.
You're going to try and pry the can out?
Yes.
Just put a hole in it. Just turn the package upside down, it'll fall out.
It will? Okay, I got it. Okay. Yeah, alright, so I bump them down like that. Okay.
Okay, sweetie. See what she's doing now?
I'll get my queen out.
She live?
She's alive. Just move her around. Here. Okay.
Are there worker bees in the box with that queen?
No.
What
No,
I can't
she's-
even look at her real quick. Okay.
She's inside.
We're going to have Angie just focus on putting the package in. Don't ask Angie any questions. If you have a question, ask me or ask Tim.
Or
But,
save them till afterwards.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to take 2 of the center frames out. And down. This, right?
Now I will interject. This is where some beekeepers differ on installing a queen. Like my opinion is, I actually go back in and release my own queen. I put electrical tape around the whole, all the sides of the queen cage, and actually go back and release the queen myself after 3 days.
Angie's going to take this home before the queen's out, and so stapling it on makes sure that she stays in place and that she doesn't have to go in and make sure it didn't drop down on the bottom board where it would die.
Did you see the way you turned the cage?
Make sure the screen is faced to where the bees can access the queen. Don't turn it towards the foundation. She will die. That's the feeder, right?
Did you take
That's so that they can feed her.
Did
This
you take
frame
the
is
cork out on the sugar end?
The frame.
No, you did.
It's okay?
You did perfect.
Okay.
You did great.
Okay. So I'm going to bump it down one more time. And took 2 frames out and I'll bump them.
Whoa. That's a lot of bees, yeah.
If you get to the point that you
There's a
want
lot of bees in there.
just hand it to me and I will.
Whoa.
Ryan once said it's not possible to get them all out of the cage, but I think it is.
Well, the other thing you can do is leave the cage at the entrance. I would bang it a few times and shake the bees out pretty hard. And then you can, if there's 10 bees left in it, you can put it at the entrance and they'll go in. There you go.
Okay.
And you may mash Margaret or Samantha, but they're not going to know.
There's a big pile of bees in the bottom, so if she drops that down in, she's going to squash bees. They really only need about 5 frames, but it's important to get the ones around the queen tight together because they have to fill that void between the sheets of foundation with bodies. And so the farther apart they are, the less frames they're going to cover. It's important for the frames to be as close together as possible because they fill the void in between the sheets of foundation with their bodies. That's how they have to be packed in to draw a foundation to make wax, comb.
It's called
And-
bee space.
And the wider the space, the less frames they're going to cover in their.
So after that, then I would just feed her, and BJ's you're gonna go over what kind of feeder, right? Honey? Okay. So I'll put this on top so that if I want to feed them inside, I have room to put my jar. I did bring a jar. And sit it right on top of where the queen.
You don't want it on top of the
No.
queen, just the head or just behind the queen.
Okay.
Your queen cage will look like this. Totally different cage. And the candy is totally different. You cannot let her eat out of the cage on this one. You have to release her. If you take the strap off of the candy, high possibility that she will get killed. Uh-oh. I'd go back to
One side's my daughter's artwork.
Do you have the lid? Do you have the lid with the little slash marks in it? Do that?
Yes.
You can use a small nail or a hive tool in order to make the holes bigger, but you cannot just use the ones that come in the pack. It's too small.
The can makes a good feeder, and it's got 2 tiny pinholes. That's to keep them alive during transit. If it had anything bigger, it would lose all of its syrup. But to take the lid and put a couple little slashes in it, you can always go back in and close them up from the rear. But had a guy a couple years ago that watched all this and went home and installed his packages, and he stood there and broke his arm, patting himself on the back as he put a big slash in, and all the syrup ran to the ground, and there were 2 or 3 bees on the ground getting that syrup. And then he called a week later wanting to know why his bees were dead. They starved. They have to have food as fast as they can take it to draw a foundation. And actually the 3-pound package was supposed to go in this one and the 2 in that one, so we're going to dump part of that package in here and fix that. But that's easy to do. 2 pounds is like bringing home a baby that's a month premature on foundation because it's still cold at night and they just don't have enough bees to give it a good action. Anything else you're going to tell them?
No, I was just going to ask you to go ahead and cover it up.
Yeah, cover it up. Entrance feeders go down at the front. You could use the jar down here. This is more of an accessory, auxiliary feeder. It's easy and convenient for you. It's not ever meant to be a primary feeder. Their cluster temperature is going to be what tonight?
93?
No, 75 degrees. That's the critical thing. They don't have any brood. And so they don't, without any brood in 75, they're sluggish in a cold night, and they can only get food if it's immediately there at the cluster. They can't go 5 inches. They can't go to a bucket. They can't go to the entrance feeder. Frame feeders work great for volume, but if they don't have the 95-degree cluster temperature and a higher activity level, you're going to have bees that often drown in a frame feeder. So this is a bad choice for right now. We're feeding them as if it's an emergency, critical situation. We could put this on the front and put a jar on the front. They wouldn't do much with it for a few days. But for right now, it's critical that they have all the food they can take and that they be able to get it. And that 75-degree temperature surprised you, didn't it? So you have to think of how they can do things. Do you want to show them this? You know what that is.
Yeah, the small hive beetle trap.
So what is it?
The small hive beetle bait. We did have these last year, a lot of hive beetles. I don't know.
Otherwise known as a beetle barn.
The beetle barn, yeah, there you go.
So the special concoction inside of the beetle barn?
Oh, yes, yes. Secret recipe. So, Angie,
Yes.
how much are they going to eat? How fast?
Well, I would hope that they would clear that out in 2 to 3 days, right? And draw a comb. Is that right? 2 to 3 days?
And what's your schedule? When are you going to come back and check on them?
And in 2 days, I will come back and release the queen if there's enough comb drawn.
What is enough comb? Yeah,
2 to 3 sides of frames, so 1.5 frames of comb drawn, hopefully in the size of the inlet.
And why is that important?
So that when I release the queen, she can have somewhere to lay her eggs.
I said release the queen. I thought they had like a wax plug or something in it that the bees took out.
That cage has a very large, a third of the compartment is candy. They might eat out of it in 3 days, they might eat out of it in 10 days. She wants to be precise and have the queen get out at the right time. So she's going to go back in and make sure the queen does not get out too soon. What happens is if they don't have enough comb drawn on the foundation, it's equivalent to a motel room. You've never ever left a motel room, driven to the curb, stopped and said, I can't leave. I just love this place too much. I'm going back. It never happened. But think about walking into your very, very first home ever. Everything's in place, all the furnishings. You walk in and you say, this is mine. I never want to leave. That's the difference between comb being drawn and not being drawn. There's no commitment, there's no investment without comb being drawn. And the problem is, a lot of times the bees will go out the front door and leave. They are only going to draw a comb like that if they're able to get food as fast as they can take it. They can work 24 hours a day, but it has to be where they can get it, no matter what the temperature is, no matter any other obstacle.
I've got top feeders with mine that's got the floats in it. Would that be better for you?
No.
The jars or
Your other one is fine when they have brood, but they don't need 2 gallons of food. They need a little bit at a time. This is like a 1-week-old baby. They don't need a gallon of milk. They need a little 4 or 6 ounce bottle.
Would it be better to give it like that?
Directly above the top.
This is emergency feeding on foundation.
Basically, what the equivalent would be to putting food either in a frame feeder like that or a top feeder is setting a baby bottle across the room from your 1 month old. He's not going to get it.
The can, I have a question. Jar feeder, I understand. The can is the can that came with the box. You just flip it up and put it in there. Isn't all the food running
Here.
down now?
Here.
See that? I mean, isn't all the food running down?
No, I want you to see the slits in it, how big they are, and you can pass them around.
That was on this. That was on the original.
Well, it's actually an extra lid. I didn't even take the lid off the other can.
When you get a package, normally the slit's that big.
When you put the jar in there upside down.
And the good thing about the can is you can take it off, you can top up the syrup, you can refill it, reuse it. It's convenient. A quart jar has trouble fitting in a 6 5/8 super unless it's like a mayonnaise jar or a spaghetti sauce jar. They're a little bit smaller. But a standard quart jar is a little bit too tall. And your inner cover might give you enough space for it, but without the inner cover, it'll be holding the lid up, yeah.
When you put that quart jar in, you had a structure sort of supporting it, keeping it from falling over, I guess. Did that little piece of wood or structure come with a package, or did you make that?
I've got a whole box of them at the shop.
But that was just made to hold the jar up.
So what's the difference between emergency feeding and would you normally, like for a healthy hive, would you feed it in the top like that?
Do they have brood?
Yes. So no?
Small cluster in the wintertime is a crisis.
Okay,
So a healthy cluster in the wintertime you can feed from a different angle?
It depends how cold it is, how active the hive is.
also, I guess, keep the jar from that open.
There's lots of variations on how to install a package. Many of them have downfalls, and if you don't take into account things like temperature and activity level and so on, you could have half your bees dead the next morning. Bees don't have body fat, they can't store fluid in their body, and when it's cold they burn up the food in their body trying to keep warm. So they have to have replacement to keep going.
DJ, I'm a little confused on, we're getting it back to you with the queen. When we release the queen in winter, how's the queen get out on your package?
I'm going to go in about 2 or 3 days. That's why we're feeding them. We have to draw the comb because there was no comb in the hive. And if there's enough comb drawn, I'll actually open up the screen, get her out, supposed to spit on her, and then they'll clean her off and get a big dose of her
asking about her getting out.
Yes.
And Angie just explained that she's not going to let the queen get out on her own. She's going to release the queen. The queen will not get out until Angie's satisfied that the time is right. And for the queen to eat out of the cage on her own should only happen after the comb is drawn. But the problem is with the big cage, if you go in and they have their comb drawn and then you pull the cork, it might be another week before she gets out. You don't want that. You want her out when you want her out.
Right.
Why are you going to spit on her?
So that they clean her off, and unless it's a joke and you're just telling
No.
So they clean her off and they get, yeah.
And she's less likely to fly also.
Right.
Those two things.
But you're not going to use sugar water.
Did you tell him why you were careful not to spray the queen in the cage in the package?
I don't think I said, but so that she doesn't clean herself off. So, and they can't reach her to clean her off. So
How do bees breathe?
Through their
Spiracles. They have openings down their body that the air goes in through, and if she would have sprayed her with 1-to-1 syrup, it would have killed her, because there are no workers in the cage to clean her. And so you should be careful to spray down on the bees or spray so you're spraying the backside of the queen cage. These are little things. Lonnie, you were in that. You're going to talk about avoiding the problems, anything that we don't cover, aren't you? You did that workshop at Bee School, right? Yeah, avoiding problems. Okay. Nancy, we'll let Nancy tell those things. And anything we've got, you guys covered.